I've been co-signing my sister's life for 4 years. Her car loan. Her credit card when she just needed a boost. The security deposit on her apartment in Mississauga when her landlord wanted first and last. Every single time, she had a reason. And every single time, I told myself this was the last time. My name was on so much of her financial life that my mortgage broker once joked I was running a one-woman credit union. I laughed. It wasn't funny. My name is not important. What matters is that I'm 31 years old. I work as a project coordinator for a mid-sized construction firm in Brampton, and I spent the better part of my adult life believing that taking care of my sister was the same thing as loving her. Our mother passed when I was 24 and my sister was 19. Before she died, lying in a hospital bed at Street, Michael's with tubes in her arms and the morphine making her voice soft and far away, she held my hand and asked me to look after her. I said yes without hesitating. I would have said yes to anything in that room. My sister's name I'll keep private. I'll call her my sister, because that's what she was, and I'll call her fiancé Derek, because that's close enough to what his name actually is. Derek came into my sister's life about 2 years after our mother died. He was charming in the way that certain men are charming loudly, performatively, in ways that made you feel like you were lucky to be in the room. He had opinions about everything, and a way of delivering them that made disagreement feel like a personal failing. My sister softened around him in a way I'd never seen her soften. She laughed differently. She deferred to him constantly. I told myself it was love. I've since revised that opinion. The first time Derek and I were in the same room, he shook my hand for about 3 seconds too long and said, "Your sister talks about you all the time. She says you're the responsible one." He said it like it was a compliment. I understand now that it was an assessment. For the first year, I stayed in my lane. I had my own apartment in Etobicoke, my own bills, my own life. I visited my sister on weekends, and we had dinner, and it was fine. Derek would sometimes be there, sometimes not. When he was there, the conversation always seemed to circle back to money, in some oblique way. What things cost, what people with real ambition could afford, what kind of life a person could build if they were willing to take some risk. He wasn't asking me for anything directly. He was just planting seeds. The first request came from my sister, not from him. She called me on a Tuesday night in February, which I remember because it was the kind of cold that makes Toronto genuinely hostile, and she said she and Derek wanted to buy a place together, a condo in Oakville. They'd found something they loved. The problem was that Derek's credit score had taken a hit after a business venture a few years back. Nothing serious, she said. Just some cash flow issues that were fully resolved, and without a cosigner, their rate would be brutal. "I just need you to co-sign the mortgage," she said. "You won't have to pay anything. It's just your name." I want to be honest about something. I knew, even then, that co-signing a mortgage is not a small thing. I'm not financially illiterate. I know that co-signing means you are equally liable. I know that your name on paper is not a technicality, it's a legal obligation. I knew all of that, and I said yes anyway, because my mother's voice was still very loud in my head, and my sister was crying softly on the other end of the phone, and I didn't have the language yet to separate grief from obligation. The condo closed in April. I co-signed. I told myself it was a one-time thing. It was not a one-time thing. Over the next 18 months, I co-signed a car loan for Derek. His previous vehicle had apparently been repossessed, another cash flow issue. Nothing serious, and then a line of credit that they said was for home improvements. I lent my sister $4,000 directly at one point, which she said she'd pay back by the end of the year. She did not pay it back by the end of the year. When I brought it up gently at Christmas, Derek said, with this very specific smile, "We're a bit cash-strapped right now with the renovation costs. I'm sure you understand." And then he changed the subject. I noticed that my sister never contradicted him. I noticed that when I asked her questions directly, she would glance at him first, just briefly, before answering. I noticed that the dynamic between the three of us had quietly shifted into something where I was the resource and they were the recipients, and no one had ever explicitly agreed to this arrangement, but here we all were. The renovation they kept referencing was real. They were updating the condo, new kitchen, new flooring, a bathroom reno. It looked beautiful in my sister's Instagram photos. She tagged the account of the contractor they used. She did not tag me, the person whose credit had made the whole thing possible. I want to be clear that I am not telling this story to paint myself as a saint. I made choices. I said yes, when I should have said no. I let the grief and the guilt about my mother calcify into a reflex. And every time Derek or my sister framed a request in terms of family responsibility, I flinched toward compliance. That's on me. I owned it in therapy, and I own it here. But what happened last September, that was not on me. That part I want to be very clear about. My sister called me on a Friday afternoon. She was excited, talking fast the way she does when something has gone well. She and Derek had found a house. An actual detached house in Hamilton. A fixer-upper, she said. But good bones, great neighborhood, close to the GO station. The asking price was just under $600,000. They wanted to put in an offer that weekend. I told her I was happy for her. I meant it. And then she said, "We need you to co-sign again." I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, "I can't do that." She didn't say anything. The silence had a texture to it. "The condo mortgage is still on my credit," I said. "If I co-sign another mortgage, my debt-to-income ratio is going to be..." "We'll refinance the condo," she said. "Derek's credit is in better shape now. We just need you for the house to get through the approval. Once we close, we'll refinance the condo and get you off it." "That's what you said last time." Another silence. Then, "This is really important to us, okay? Derek has been working so hard. We deserve this." There it was. We deserve this. As if deserving something is the same as being entitled to someone else's financial liability. I said I needed to think about it. She said they needed an answer by Sunday. I said I understood. I called my mortgage broker that evening, a woman named Patricia who has been doing this for 20 years and has the particular gift of saying hard things very gently. I explained the situation. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Sweetheart, if you co-sign this mortgage, you are going to have significant difficulty qualifying for anything yourself in the next several years. Your credit is stretched, you have existing obligations. If either of these properties has a missed payment, it comes back on you." I knew this. But hearing it from Patricia made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I called my sister Sunday morning and I said no. I said it clearly and I said it without a lot of preamble. I said I cared about her and I was sorry. But I couldn't do this. She started crying. Then Derek got on the phone. Derek's voice, when he's unhappy, takes on a very particular quality. It doesn't get louder. It gets quieter and more precise. Like he's selecting each word from a list of weapons. He said, "I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Your sister needs you, and you're saying no. I'm saying I can't co-sign another mortgage. It's not about want. It's always about want," he said. "You want to protect yourself. That's fine. But your mother asked you to take care of her. You told her you would. And now, when it actually matters..." I hung up. I don't say that to sound decisive. I hung up because I was crying, and I didn't want him to know. I sat in my kitchen for about an hour, and I stared at the wall, and I thought about my mother, and I felt terrible. That was the intended effect of what Derek said, and it worked, and I want to name that clearly. Weaponizing someone's grief about their dead parent is a specific kind of cruelty. My sister sent me a series of texts over the next 2 days. Some of them were sad. Some of them were angry. The last one said, "You've always been selfish. You just hid it better than the rest of us. Derek was right about you from the beginning." I did not respond. I blocked her number. I blocked Derek's as well. This is the part of the story where, in a different version, I would tell you that I felt free. That cutting contact was liberating. That I slept soundly that night and woke up clear-eyed and grateful. What actually happened is that I cried for about a week. I called my friend Nadine, who has known me since we were both at U of T, and who has the rare quality of being honest without being cruel, and she came over with Thai food and sat with me while I went through the whole thing from the beginning. When I finished, she said, "You know this has been happening for years, right? This wasn't sudden." I knew, but knowing something and absorbing it are different processes. I also called Patricia again and asked her to do a full review of my credit picture. The news was not catastrophic, but it was sobering. The condo cosign was still sitting there. The car loan was still there. The line of credit. All of it reflected as my obligation, because legally, that's what it was. Patricia said I needed to start thinking about getting myself off these instruments. I wrote to my sister, not by text, by email, formal and documented, and I said that I expected her to begin the process of refinancing the condo mortgage and removing me as co-signer, as she had promised to do. I gave her 90 days. I said this was not a request. She didn't respond. Derek responded. He said they were actively exploring options and that I should be patient and that sending formal emails was creating unnecessary hostility. He said if I wanted to be removed from the mortgage, I was welcome to consult a lawyer, but he hoped it wouldn't come to that. I consulted a lawyer. I found a family and financial law firm in Mississauga. Through a referral from my HR department, they had an employee assistance program that covered an initial consultation. The lawyer I spoke with, I'll call her my lawyer, reviewed the documents I'd brought, and explained my options with the calm efficiency of someone who has seen this exact situation many times. She said that as a co-signer, I couldn't force them to refinance, but I could monitor the account, document everything, and if they missed a payment, I had the right to pursue remedies. She also said that if they attempted to take on the Hamilton mortgage through any lender, and if I was still on their existing instruments, some of that activity might surface in ways I could track. She said to keep documenting. I kept documenting. October passed. November. They did not begin the refinancing process. In December, my sister called me from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up without thinking. The moment I heard her voice, I understood the strategy: unknown number, holiday season, count on sentiment to lower my guard. She said she was sorry. She said Derek had been under a lot of stress. She said she missed me. And then, about 4 minutes into the call, she said they'd found a new lender for the Hamilton house, one that specialized in working with buyers in their situation, but there was a condition. The lender wanted a co-signer with clean credit. She wasn't even embarrassed to ask. That's the part that still catches me, when I think about it. 4 months of silence. A reconciliation call that lasted less than 5 minutes before arriving at the actual point, and not a trace of self-consciousness about it. I said, "No." She said, "Can you at least think about it?" I said, "I've thought about it." "No." She said, "Derek said you'd say that." I said, "Derek's right." She hung up. I sat with that for a moment, and then I called Patricia and I asked her a specific question. If my sister and Derek were attempting to qualify for a mortgage through an alternative or private lender, and if they were using my existing co-signatures as part of their financial picture, was there anything I could do to protect myself? Patricia said there was. She walked me through the process of formally requesting to be removed from the car loan, which, unlike the mortgage, was something I could pursue more directly, and she also told me something I hadn't known, that I could place a notation on my credit file, indicating that I had not authorized new co-signing activity, which wouldn't prevent all uses of my name, but would create a paper trail and flag to lenders. I did both of those things that same week. In January, I got an email from the lender associated with the condo mortgage. It was a standard notification, a change to the file, routine administrative update. My name was on the account, so I was copied automatically. I read it twice to make sure I understood what I was looking at. Derek had applied to refinance the condo, which, on its surface, was exactly what I'd been asking for him to remove me as co-signer. But the application had come back with conditions. Their debt-to-income ratio, even with his improved credit, was too high. The refinance had been declined, which meant I was still on the mortgage. Which also meant, and this is the part that I want to be precise about, that when they had applied to that new lender for the Hamilton house, the lender's assessment of their financial picture would have included the full condo mortgage as my liability. The notation I'd placed on my credit file had done its job. The lender had flagged the co-signer situation as unresolved and had asked for clarification. According to what I was later able to confirm through my lawyer, that clarification never came, because there was nothing clean to clarify. The application for the Hamilton house was declined. They had put down a deposit. In Ontario, when you put in a conditional offer, and the condition in this case, financing isn't met, you can typically recover your deposit. But they hadn't used a standard conditional offer. They had submitted a firm offer, which means no conditions. Derek had apparently convinced my sister, or perhaps himself, that the financing was a sure thing. It was not a sure thing. The deposit was not returned. I found out the amount through my sister, who called me in February again from an unknown number, though this time she didn't start with pleasantries. The deposit had been $35,000. Derek's parents had contributed a significant portion of it. The house was gone. The money was gone. My sister, on that call, said things to me that I won't repeat here. Some of them were accusations. Some of them were just pain, expressed loudly and without direction. I let her talk. When she'd finished, I said, very quietly, "I told you in September that I couldn't co-sign. I told you in December. I asked you, in writing, months ago to begin the refinancing process. None of this is something I did to you." She said, "You could have helped us and you chose not to." I said, "I protected myself. That's not the same thing as hurting you." She hung up. I haven't heard from Derek since. My lawyer followed up with a formal letter reiterating my request to be removed from the condo cosign and outlining the timeline of my documented requests. The refinancing process is ongoing. It's slower than I'd like, and it may require a formal proceeding to force the issue, but it's moving. Patricia checks in with me monthly. The car loan was resolved in February. They paid it out rather than face the alternative, which my lawyer had outlined in sufficient detail that it apparently motivated action. My credit score, as of last month, is the highest it's been since I was 26 and had no co-sign debt at all. I've been seeing a therapist for about 8 months now. We talk a lot about the difference between loyalty and liability, about how grief can be manipulated, not always by bad people, but sometimes by people who have learned that your grief is a door that opens when they knock in a specific way. We talk about my mother, and what she actually asked me to do in that hospital room, and what she likely believed she was asking, which was probably not sign your name to every financial instrument your sister and her financially troubled fiancé require in perpetuity. Nadine came over last month, and we made dinner together, her jerk chicken, my rice, a bottle of Niagara Riesling between us, and at some point she said, "You seem different." I asked her what she meant. she said. You seem like you're in your own life. I think about that a lot. I was in my sister's life for so long, financially, emotionally, administratively, that I had stopped fully inhabiting my own. My credit was hers. My sense of obligation was organized around her needs. My mother's voice, which should have been a comfort, had been turned into a lever, and I had let it be turned, and that is something I'm still working through. But I pay my own rent. I have savings for the first time in years. I'm looking at a pre-approval for a condo in my own name. Just my name. No co-signers. No asterisks. My sister exists somewhere. I hope she's okay. I hope she and Derek have found a way to stabilize what is, by any objective measure, a financially precarious situation of their own construction. I hope she thinks about the conversation I tried to have with her in September, the one where I said I couldn't do it and she handed the phone to Derek so he could tell me what our dead mother would have wanted. I hope, eventually, she understands the difference between someone failing her and someone finally refusing to fail themselves. Some relationships can't be repaired. Some trust, once broken in a specific way, doesn't reconstitute. I don't say that with satisfaction. I say it the way you say a true thing that costs you something. My mother asked me to take care of my sister. She did not ask me to disappear inside of her. And if she were here, not the morphine-softened voice I carry around, but really here, the woman who worked double shifts at the hospital and taught me how to read a lease before I signed it. I think she'd say I did the right thing. I have to believe that. Some days I do.